It's Thursday, March 1st, and this is The National.
Tonight, Vladimir Putin threatens the West with what he calls an invincible nuclear weapon. Just how much should the world worry?
Mountain Equipment Co-op drops brands linked to American gun makers. Could other Canadian retailers follow suit?
Donald Trump threatens a trade war over steel, what it could mean for Canada. And Chantal, Andrew, and Althea on the dinner invitation that haunts the Prime Minister.
Vladimir Putin has made no secret he wants Russia to return as a superpower. And in Moscow today, for his annual address to Parliament, he unveiled new nuclear weapons.
Планирующим крылатым блоком.
In front of a massive video screen, Putin revealed several weapon systems. Among them, illustrations of a new ICBM, a new cruise missile, and a nuclear torpedo that can cross oceans. The point of all of them, to dodge detection, evade missile defenses. And even if it was watched closely by defense experts the world over, and it surely was, the first audience was domestic. As Chris Brown tells us from Moscow, this is an election year.
To hear Vladimir Putin tell it, the cruise missile carried by this rocket is basically unstoppable. Flying at 20 times the speed of sound, it can zig and zag and deliver a nuclear warhead to any target in the world. It goes like a meteorite to its target, boasted Putin, like a fireball.
Нас никто не слушал.
Then, in reference to the United States pulling out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty, Putin added ominously, "They kept ignoring us, so listen to us now." It was a provocative Cold War-style threat, and the audience of lawmakers and business leaders loved it. They'd gathered for the annual State of the Nation address, but with a presidential election in just a few weeks, it was also a chance for Russians to hear what they could expect from 6 more years of Putin. And the answer was clearly a bigger, more aggressive military. I hope all the things I have said today will sober up any potential aggressor, including expanding NATO or moving it closer to our borders. It is a certainty Putin will be re-elected, but low voter turnout could taint his win. Evoking the image of Russia as a superpower again may rouse people to come out. And for some Moscow commuters we talked to, the saber rattling worked. I really like the military part, said Yelena Varanya. We've had it up to here. They've surrounded us on all sides. But others say they don't buy it. I don't understand the logic, said Konstantin Malikov. We have nothing in this country, but our military is great. Why do we need this?
Putin did promise to cut poverty rates in half and to spend more on health care, but there were few specifics. Rather, the main point today was to yet again stoke fears that Russia's enemies are closer and more dangerous than ever, and most Russians seem ready to continue believing that. Chris Brown, CBC News, Moscow.
That video Putin showed during his speech made it clear that one of those enemies is the United States. So how did Washington react? The CBC's Paul Hunter has that.
The animation is sobering. Russian missiles that could circumnavigate the planet. Nuclear-powered cruise missiles hugging the terrain that could fly effectively forever, with targets that could be anywhere, including, as the animation highlights, Central Florida. When that segment ended, Vladimir Putin's audience broke into applause.
It was certainly unfortunate to have watched the video animation that depicted a nuclear attack on the United States. We don't regard that as the behavior of a responsible international player.
The U.S. said today it was unsurprised by Putin's claims. If he's really developing such weaponry, it said he's violating international treaties. And though the Pentagon today dismissed any current threat to the U.S.,
we're prepared and we're ready.
The rhetoric and those images are all unsettlingly familiar.
Welcome to the new arms race, same as the old arms race. Here we go. This is no bluff. Putin says he's not bluffing, and he's right. He can do this. There aren't many things that Russia can do well, build big missiles and with large nuclear weapons on them that can destroy our country, they've had a lot of practice.
In other words, even Putin's intent ought not be ignored, nor the danger of a tit-for-tat build-up in the U.S. Consider Donald Trump's State of the Union address just a few weeks ago.
We must modernize and rebuild our nuclear arsenal, hopefully never having to use it, but making it so strong and so powerful that it will deter any acts of aggression.
On Trump's aspirations,
Putin is answering that, and he's answering it convincingly.
should we be freaked out?
We should be freaked out.
It's the threat of a buildup the world has seen before that risks growing and growing until both sides agree to stop. Unless they don't. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Well, some nuclear policy experts say Putin could actually be bluffing. None of the weapon systems are actually deployed. Now, some may never be deployed. Still, much of their power comes from simply showing them. Nukes are political weapons designed to send messages. Funny how the U.S. announced its own nuclear posture review just last month.
We must keep America's deterrent credible by making it modern.
So there is an element of theater to all of this.
I'd say all of it is real and all of it is theater. There was enough real footage in there, and it chimes with enough information that we already have.
Take Putin's new nuclear torpedo. Russian state TV happened to show a copy of its specifications while covering a meeting more than 2 years ago. Not an accident.
If you want to convince another country that you're capable of retaliating against them, you have to show them what you've got. Deterrence operates in the mind of an enemy.
Deterrence, a fancy word for fear of what these weapons can do. The force of the atom bomb that demolished Hiroshima, for example, was around 15 kilotons. That's about 15,000 tons of dynamite. A modern nuclear weapon ranges up to 50 megatons, and there are a lot of those. North Korea has 15. Israel, India, Pakistan, the UK, China, and France are believed to have a lot more. And now take a deep breath, because the US and Russia stockpiles dwarf them all. So at some point, the "we have more than you" posturing doesn't really mean much, except just maybe a greater chance of a mishap, a political misinterpretation causing a country on a hair trigger to pull it.
You always have to wonder how it's going to be operated, how they will keep the weapons safe. There are a lot of unknowns.
So after all that, you know, the oddity is that the raw number of nuclear weapons has actually dropped since the Cold War. And I mean, maybe it doesn't sound like it from all these political pronouncements, but, you know, technically, both Russia and the U.S. are still committed to arms reductions. You know, they entered a new treaty back in 2011, but that expires in a few years, and probably all bets are off.
That graphic was stark, Adrian. Okay, let's turn from a Cold War stance to the makings of a potential trade war. Donald Trump says that the U.S. will impose punishing new tariffs, slapping a 25% duty on steel and 10% on aluminum imports. It's a move designed to protect American industry and jobs that has Canada bracing for impact. The big crackdown has already had an immediate effect on the markets. Stocks were sent plummeting on Wall Street after this noon hour announcement. The Dow closing more than 400 points down. And the president's move is also spooking manufacturers on this side of the border. Not surprisingly, this country sends more steel and aluminum to the United States than anyone else. And just how badly does Canada need the U.S. market? Well, last year we exported more than $9 billion worth of aluminum and $5.5 billion in steel stateside. You can be sure that Canadian exporters are trying to sort out what all this tariff talk actually means. Our Catherine Cullen has more on what could be the fallout for our steel and aluminum industries.
When it comes to a time when our country can't make aluminum and steel, and somebody said it before, and I will tell you, you almost don't have much of a country.
Donald Trump has long talked tough on trade, but today he threw a punch, announcing tariffs are coming next week.
It'll be for a long period of time.
It's a blow they'll feel in the Ontario city they still call Steel Town.
We still have hundreds of companies that are in steel production, and they employ 10,000 people.
And he says it's not just Canada that will be hurt. This will drive up prices in the U.S. too.
I think that they are shooting themselves in the foot, but obviously driving a stake in the heart of Hamilton as well.
In fact, the company that makes Budweiser is part of the chorus of Americans asking Trump not to do this. And it's not just Americans.
This is a major issue. It's the beginning of a potential trade war, not only between Canada and the U.S., but the European continent and the U.S.
But perhaps Canada can avoid the fight. When George W. Bush imposed a steel tariff in 2002, Canada got an exemption. The government was asked today, will there be an exemption this time?
As you would expect, we are following the situation very carefully.
The White House didn't clear it up either.
The president made up in his mind which countries he might exempt or at least is considering.
Again, I'm not going to get into any details on this front.
The Foreign Affairs Minister says Canada is prepared to respond, but didn't clarify how. Should restrictions be imposed on Canadian steel and aluminum products, Canada will take responsive measures to defend its trade interests and workers. This is all, of course, if Trump follows through with his plan. He's facing incredible pressure not to, and he is nothing if not unpredictable. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
And Andrew, on those targets today, tariffs today, aluminum and steel, the president isn't expected to actually formally sign them into action until next week. So we'll just have to wait and see if there's a chance that he will spare Canada in this new round.
Indeed. Meantime, Rosie, more fallout today here in Canada from the deadly school shooting in Florida a couple of weeks ago. Mountain Equipment Co-op CEO David Labister has bowed to the pressure. It's been intense ever since it became widespread knowledge that some brands the store carries are owned by Vista Outdoor. That's a company that has holdings in the manufacture of assault-style weapons. So, in the wake of the recent Florida school shooting, an open letter. Thousands of members have contacted us to ask that we stop selling products made by these brands. After careful consideration, we have decided to, effective immediately, suspend any further orders with the 5 brands owned by Vista Outdoor, which we carry. Now, when you consider the brands they're talking about, big names like Camelback and Bale, it seems like a bold move, but also worth pointing out here, the stock they've already got, they're still planning on selling. It's only when they run out, that'll be it. Still, as Briar Stewart explains, the company says it is committed to the gun control message.
Still in stock, but once these water bottles and camping accessories are gone, there will be no more products made by Vista Outdoor in Mountain Equipment Co-op, because that huge American conglomerate also makes high-powered weapons.
But ownership has never been something we've looked at in the past. And with the change in mergers and acquisitions over the last sort of decade, this is now something that we have to look at.
The decision came because the co-op was under a groundswell of pressure by its own members who pushed for MEC to sever its ties with Vista after the deadly shooting in Parkland, Florida.
I think it's a good step forward. I think it's setting a trend or setting a precedent for maybe other organizations to follow suit.
That's great. I mean, I support the gun control issue in the States.
Of course, MEC isn't the only Canadian store to carry these products. They would be on shelves across the country. Take Camelback, a brand which manufactures water bottles and hydration packs. These would be for sale in hundreds of stores, and some other retailers have also decided to no longer stock them. Running Room made that decision today, saying it stopped further orders from Camelback. Still, the majority of sports stores that carry these products in Canada haven't weighed in. But in the U.S., this whole movement is picking up steam as more companies are facing increasing pressure.
In general, boycotts don't work very well. This one seems to be different. Companies seem to realize that it's not just a matter of being on the wrong side of a subset of customers, it's a matter of being on the wrong side of history.
Officials with MEC say they hope their move adds to the conversation.
So what do you think it would take for MEC to continue restocking Vista products?
If they start speaking and driving the discussion on gun control, and they become advocates for gun control, I believe we would open those relationships again.
Without that, these will be the last of the Vista products on these shelves. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
So that's the state of things on this side of the border. But Briar mentioned the movement picking up steam down south. More than a dozen major U.S. companies have given in to demands by activists and customers that they cut ties with the broader gun lobby movement, particularly the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Delta and United Airlines, rental car companies, Avis, Budget, Enterprise, and Hertz, they've all announced they will no longer offer special discounts to NRA members. FedEx, though, has decided to take a stand. It's refused to cancel discounts for NRA members, saying it doesn't set prices according to a person's politics. The boycott FedEx hashtag is the result. And then there's Apple, Amazon, and Google.
The truth is, they want to ban every gun in America.
All three stream NRA TV, a pro-gun news and entertainment network that broadcasts 24/7. A sample of the backlash they're facing: I spend hundreds a month buying everything from tooth floss to dining room chairs, but if they won't drop NRA TV, I will have to boycott Amazon. Which brings us to today, what's being pushed as a full day of protest. From celebrity activist Alyssa Milano: don't shop, don't stream, don't ship. Now, no matter what companies decide, any meaningful changes would have to come from government, and there's nothing in the works in the immediate future.
No, and there hasn't been either. How's this for a reality check? Since the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012, more than 360 gun bills have been introduced in Congress, but only one has actually been signed into law, according to one news website anyway.
And we mentioned Delta cutting ties with the NRA. Well, the airline's based in Georgia, and today the state government actually took revenge. Lawmakers passed a tax bill without a proposed break on jet fuel. They just took it out. That would have saved Delta $40 million US every year, so that's going to hurt.
Okay, meantime, here's what else we're working on tonight on The National. Hedley takes the stage in Brampton one night after announcing they'll soon be taking time off indefinitely.
And a hidden camera investigation into one of Canada's biggest telecoms, the real deal about Bell's door-to-door sales tactics.
And our reporters try to get some answers out of the public safety minister over the Atwell affair.
You want me to speculate about operational details?
Just
no,
tell us.
No, I can't. I can't.
A hidden camera investigation into how the country's biggest telecom player gets your money has prompted Bell Canada to apologize. Our colleagues at Marketplace and Go Public teamed up to do something never done before in the telecom industry. They placed a CBC journalist inside a door-to-door sales team working for Bell Canada, which turned out to have a creative approach to the truth. Erica Johnson has the story.
1, 2, 3, yes! First one to the field! First one to make money!
A pep talk before sales reps fan out to Toronto area neighborhoods, subcontracted by Bell to pitch 5 TV and internet.
Bell offers blazing fast internet and industry-leading security features, all on Canada's largest fiber optic network.
For 7 days and nights, our producer filmed wearing hidden cameras.
Hi there! How are you today?
Over and over, sales reps made misleading promises, like this one on price.
Now this price is an ongoing price making you forever.
In fact, there's no such thing as a guaranteed price. Bell can increase it, but they weren't trained to tell customers that.
So it's kind of ongoing price.
Your forever price, the maximum price Bell can ever charge you.
Gary Gemus says he was guaranteed a monthly price at the door, so he signed up. When his bill increased, he says a Bell customer service rep told him he should have read the contract.
You can't just put the responsibility just on the consumer, because the consumer is relying on a Bell representative.
Back on the front porch, salespeople misled about promo prices, fiber optics, and internet speeds.
What Bell is promising you guys is this. The minimum you guys receive across any of your devices, it's 50. That is the minimum.
But speeds can't be guaranteed. The man who runs this sales team, Mohammed Abdelhadi, won't give us an interview, so we pay him a visit.
Do you have a minute to answer a few questions about your operation?
Just talk to Bell.
Why are you training your salespeople to mislead people at the door?
Talk to Bell, thank you very much.
We'd like to talk to Bell, but instead, the telecom giant sends a statement saying the examples of the sales practices you provided are in no way aligned with Bell's commitment to providing the best customer experience possible. We apologize to anyone who may have been adversely affected by this conduct.
Sir, I'm actually stopping by on behalf of Bell Canada.
Bell has also severed ties with the company who hired these reps for breaching policies.
And Erica Johnson joins me now. Erica, clearly from that story, Bell says that company was offside. So are we to take that to mean problem solved?
Well, maybe in that case. However, we have heard from door-to-door sales reps who work for other subcontracted companies selling Bell in different cities, different provinces, and they say that they too have been using misleading sales tactics at the front door.
So today, Ontario brought in this ban on door-to-door sales for a lot of goods, which is something Alberta's already done. Is it your instinct that there's any chance that this will make a difference?
Well, Ontario's big ban on door-to-door sales covers things like air conditioners, water heaters, furnaces. However, telecoms are not covered by today's ban, so it's going to be business as usual for the folks going door-to-door.
And why do I have a feeling we're going to still talk about this? What's the reaction been like to this investigation?
Huge. Since we started this investigation recently, Go Public has had almost 900 emails now from telecom customers and employees, that's at all the major telecoms, saying things like they have been upsold, they're concerned about the lack of accountability when they are misled. The employees are saying the same thing, that they are being pressured and forced to sell. Some of them saying we are being misleading, etc. So definitely, Adrian, you can count on more to come.
Okay. Erica, thanks very much.
Thank you.
So you can see that full investigation tomorrow, and you can catch Marketplace on CBC Television at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland.
And still ahead on the National, Hedley hit the stage in Brampton, Ontario tonight. We catch up with fans who stand by their band.
Plus, budget? What budget? The government spends the day answering questions about Jasbal Atwal again. Chantal, Andrew, and Althea are here to debrief the India trip issues that just won't go away. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just can't shake the painful political migraine of his India trip, no matter how badly the Liberals want to turn the page. Even after releasing a new gender-balanced budget and a big push to sell it to Canadians, all everyone, well, in Ottawa anyway, wants to talk about is Jasbal Atwal. Katie Simpson has the latest on this sticky scandal.
One of the most respected members of cabinet is trying to stop the bleeding. The public safety minister invoked his oath of office and didn't answer questions on the Jasbal Atwal affair at a committee meeting today.
I am not permitted to deal in public with classified information.
The government has blamed Liberal MP Randeep Sarai for inviting Atwal to official events during the Prime Minister's trip to India. A senior intelligence official also told reporters that rogue factions in India played a role in getting the would-be assassin to the functions. Today, the Prime Minister suggested both theories are factors in the debacle.
The MP who extended this invitation has taken responsibility for extending that invitation. But at the same time, I recognize that our intelligence agencies do good work.
But a former director of Canada's spy agency questions why a senior security official is speaking to reporters.
If it is true, it is very sensitive information, and it would seem to me that the only reason for doing that would have been considerable political pressure to do it. Look.
When journalists asked Ralph Goodale to explain the connection between theories, he wouldn't bite.
Is the NP part of the rogue elements?
You want me to speculate about operational details?
Don't speculate, just tell us.
No, I can't. I can't.
As Goodale tried to leave and put the issue to bed, the same MP who invited Atwal to the events just happened to walk directly toward reporters.
Mr. Sarai. So we just heard from Mr. Goodale. Are you a part of these rogue elements from the government?
No.
So then when you hear the rogue elements theory, what do you think? How did you not know about Mr. Atwal? Did you contact the government in order to get Mr. Atwal into the market? How did you not know? How well do you know Mr. Atwal? How did you not know about Mr.
As much as they want to, the Liberals just can't seem to change the channel. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
A conspiracy theory, a convicted attempted murderer, and a combative press conference. As Katie Simpson just told us, the backlash from Jaspal Atwal's invitation to private events with Justin Trudeau in India has gone sort of from bad to worse. Here's a little bit more from Ralph Goodale earlier today.
A public official, when they engage in providing information, offering advice, presenting information, is motivated by one thing only, and that is serving the public interest of Canada.
But the Prime Minister's office facilitated that conversation with journalists that day.
I have no knowledge of that whatsoever.
Are you saying that the MP is part of the role?
Okay, fair to say that federal budget was just a couple of days ago, maybe a little bit eclipsed by this. For thoughts on what we're calling the Atwal affair, turning to At Issue. For the second time this week, really the third, actually, if you think about it. If you did want their analysis on the federal budget, that was Tuesday night. You can find it on the podcast. For now, we're going to talk about all this. Andrew Coyne is in Toronto tonight. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, and Althea Raj is with me in Ottawa. I'm not complaining to have you this often. I just, for the record, I like it. Okay, let's start with you, Andrew. Is this now at the point where it seems like the government doesn't quite know how to manage this or shut it down? Because it does seem to just keep going, and I'm not sure how they stop it.
It's more than that. It's they keep making it worse. This story has gone through several stages, from the initial embarrassment of the tour itself to this catastrophic error, if that it was what it was, of inviting this accused, a convicted attempted murderer to the Prime Minister's dinner, to the embroiling of India in this and making India get quite out of joint as a result of this strange, midnight briefing from a senior civil servant. But now what we're seeing is this kind of comic business where they cannot get their story straight. They can't decide who to blame. Yeah. They refuse to take accountability where it belongs, which is in the Prime Minister's office. And we're now getting into things where having propped up this civil servant to give this secret briefing to journalists, they're now in this ridiculous position of saying, but he can't give the same briefing to MPs. They have no good answer for that, which is why Mr. Goodale looked so pathetic today.
Chantal, it is strange because, it is the Liberal MP's fault for inviting Atwal, and then the senior official briefing reporter says that it might be a conspiracy in factions of the Indian intelligence agencies. Like, can it be both of those things? Is it one of those things? Is this story just spinning out of control?
It might, but if you're looking at communications management, you see two things. One, dual messaging tracks that run into each other. Mm-hmm. It's the MP made an invitation that he now regrets. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, the PMO offers up a senior official to brief journalists. Yep. It's not that someone dug him out of some hiding hole and then the senior official said things. He was put on offer by the PMO, which to me translates into it was Panic City last week when this story broke and a bad good idea was implemented. How you dig yourself out of this? I don't think you can. You can only hope that time will make this go away. But at some cost, I think, to the senior government official who got himself embroiled in this. He's an adult. He went and did this briefing, said what he said, and will probably pay a price for that.
And Ward Alcock, who used to be the head of CSIS, was on Power and Politics earlier today and said shouldn't have been done. This senior official should not have done this because it talked about things that probably shouldn't have talked about. Althea.
Well, the senior official, the National Security Advisor, is a man with a very long history in this town and knows how the bureaucracy works and how to serve one's political master. He was a former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, so it's not like it's a mid-level government official here. Mm-hmm. Like, this is somebody who basically knows what they're doing. To me, the question is, why is the government of Canada looking to pick a fight with the government of India, even more so knowing that the government of India was concerned and remains concerned that there are elements within the Trudeau government that are sympathetic to Sikh nationalism? It's one thing to say, oh, oops, we're sorry, we really shouldn't have invited Mr. Atwal to come to one or actually two of our events in India. But it's quite another thing to say, well, India, you're partly to blame for this because you either took him off the blacklist or you gave him a visa knowing full well where he was going. So yes, while we were incompetent, you also enabled our incompetency by allowing this to happen. So the whole purpose of the trip, we are told, was to sort of smooth relationships with India, and then you go out and you decide to let your national security advisors say that to the reporters covering the trip. It does not make a lot of sense.
Which is highly improper, first of all, to be dragging in a civil servant to do basically political spin. The reason they did it was that he'd be believed. If it was just a regular spin person, none of the reporters would have picked up the story. So that's highly improper. It's highly improper for them to claim that responsibility for this lies anywhere except the Prime Minister's office. Even if that MP was the person who invited him, and I'm not sure we should take that at face value, but even if he was the person who invited, responsibility for vetting that is in the Prime Minister's office. That is regular practice. They seem to have waived off any security concerns on this. And when you put all this together with this long history that not just the Liberal Party, but particularly the Liberal Party has of dallying with, winking at, tolerating Sikh separatism, never mind the terrorist angle, but the separatist thing. If you want to have good relations with India, with any country, you cannot be dallying with people who want to tear that country apart.
Last word, yeah.
And you certainly don't do that when you're doing it when you're on a fence mending tour. There's a lot of questions still to be answered here.
Last point, Chantal.
And the other question is, how much of it is based on the looking for vote thing? And are there more votes for the government to have for being in trouble by getting India's nose out of joint than the opposite, the Conservatives?
No, I don't think
just
that's
today
fair.
we do a motion to deal with that.
Hang on, Chantal, finish. Okay, I'm going to change topics if I can, because I want to get all of you to weigh in on what happened to the Bloc this week. Here's a little bit of how that unfolded.
We decide that we leave the caucus of Bloc Québécois for many reasons that we already talked about many times since a year.
I can tell you that I have, and I'm not alone here. We have the will to settle and to be able to work together, and the door is still open.
So the door's still there. She's got 3 left, I think, beside her now. That's Martine Ouellette, for people that don't know her very well. Chantal, let's start with you. I mean, I don't know how many times I have been warned in this town to never say the Bloc is dead, but goodness knows, I'm not sure what happens next.
I don't think anybody knows. It's unprecedented for a party leader to lose the confidence of caucus, because that is what it is when you lose 7 out of 10, and to say, I'm going to face, because that's the line, a confidence vote in the spring of 2019. Stockwell Day lost a lot less MPs in a similar crisis and put his leadership on the line in a leadership contest and lost it, but still felt that this position was untenable. This is happening at the worst possible time for Quebec's sovereignty movement on the eve of a Quebec election, and it is a fight in Ottawa between hardliners, for sovereignty, and others that is extending into the entire sovereigntist family. So it's not just the Bloc that is going down. There's a split here. There will be a battle in Montreal soon against Jean-François Lisé's star candidate and someone from the same Martine Ouellette family. So this is a schism that stands to cost the PQ in the next election in Quebec.
Althea.
Martine Ouellette likes to say that she was elected by the members, which is not true. She was acclaimed. One thing that's a little bit sad, frankly, is that the Bloc in Ottawa has always been this party that represents the views of basically the National Assembly, especially when there was a consensus at the National Assembly in Ottawa. They were known to do very good parliamentary work. They were ardent defenders of French language rights across the country. And Martine Ouellette's leadership style, which is one of the key things that the MPs came out and said that they don't like. They don't like her sort of directional tone telling them what to do, and the fact that she doesn't listen. But also that her main focus is just sovereignty first and not basically representing the voice of Quebecers in the House of Commons. And this is a giant opening to the rest of the political parties, and surprisingly, actually, the Liberal Party, which is looking at Quebec to maintain a majority government in 2019, because surprisingly, Quebecers don't seem to like the other parties, even though they don't seem to like Justin Trudeau either. Sovereigntist.
I was looking at Eric Grenier's analysis of that today, and that also surprised me that those same voters would turn first towards Justin Trudeau, not because, as you say, they love him so much, but they're really not attracted to Jagmeet Singh for all the reasons that we talked about during the leadership race, and to the Conservatives.
And they might just stay home.
Yeah, that's true. Andrew.
I think what you have here is the intersection of 2 things. One is the decline and weakness of the Bloc, when you are in a weak position, things feed on themselves, and the divisions which you might paper over if you had the wind behind you suddenly become insurmountable, and you have these kind of existential schisms. So that's one part. The other part, of course, is this cockamamie way we have in this country of choosing party leaders. So it does give Martine Ouellet, even if she was acclaimed, it gives her this out of saying, well, I'm not responsible to the caucus because they didn't choose me. So even when you have this situation where 70% of the caucus finds your leadership repellent, somehow they have to go rather than the leader. So, you know, we keep seeing these eruptions. We saw this with the Patrick Brown situation in Ontario, and we've got to fix this.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Good news for all of you who love politics as much as we do. At Issue is also a podcast. You get extra content and the panel you just heard there every week. This week's bonus topic, what Andrew was just talking about, the Ontario PC leadership race after that second debate, Patrick Brown's second departure. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/The National.
Well, Hedley fans watched the band perform tonight, one day after frontman Jacob Hogard admitted to behaving in a way that objectified women over the years.
I think that everybody should get a second chance, and I have met them. I have been on tour with them. Like, I've seen them over 18 times, and I haven't had a bad experience.
That story is still to come on The National. On The National tonight, preparations are underway on the U.S. East Coast. A dangerous nor'easter is expected to slam the region tomorrow with heavy snow and powerful winds. Officials are warning that widespread power outages and coastal flooding are likely, and people who live on the coast have been told to be ready to evacuate. Meanwhile, mandatory evacuations are underway tonight in parts of California, right at the other end of the country. A major storm with heavy rain is approaching, and officials say that could trigger more devastating mudslides.
Due to the approaching danger and the potential for debris flows, we want everyone to be out of the area and out of harm's way by nightfall.
The mandatory evacuation order is for people living in parts of Santa Barbara County, including Montecito. That's the same community that was hit by deadly mudslides earlier this year, killing at least 20 people.
We'll keep an eye on those throughout the night. Right now, check out what's happening across the pond.
It's not a sight we see every day, that's awesome.
A strange sight indeed for this time of year in England. For days now, Siberian storms have been funneling blasts of winter across Europe. They are calling it the beast from the east. Now, some Canadians might be tempted to scoff. Snow in early March, big deal. But many in the path of this system are facing their worst winter weather in decades. The Geneva airport closed for hours this morning as crews tried to clear the mess. Conditions just getting worse as you move west, and that's when the beast from the east clashes with Atlantic storm Emma.
Go on, go on, go on. Go on, go on, go on.
For some, the icy roads meant being really late for work.
I think it might be time to come home by the time I get there.
Others totally stranded. Traffic on this busy highway was stalled for 18 hours.
Last night there was some old boys came out with biscuits and crisps, and then this morning it was all the school kids that came out, so we're getting looked after.
Always plucky spirits are making the most of things, but there is a hard reality beneath the fun. At least a dozen people have died in recent days from exposure, collisions, even slips and falls. Today, British forecasters warned of life-threatening conditions in Scotland and southwest England. Also disturbing is the source of this onslaught, because while Europe freezes, the Arctic is basking under temperatures 20 degrees above normal. That warm Arctic air is actually pushing the cold out of Siberia. The outlook for Britain, possibly 2 more weeks of winter. And just in case you're sitting at home thinking, look, Canadians could handle that, you should probably know that it was bad enough that the Canadian embassy in Dublin had to close because of the storm. So yeah, it's bad.
I'll take your word for it. Okay. A storm of a very different kind has engulfed the Canadian band Hedley. Singer Jacob Hogard is facing multiple allegations of sexual misconduct, and the controversy is testing fans.
Again, it's about the music. I don't think anyone goes on the back of a tour bus
to drink tea and play Scrabble. So I think some of these women, if you have an issue, come out with it.
Hedley's current tour could well be its last. The band announced yesterday it is taking an indefinite break after its last show this month. And as Judy Trin tells us, while Hogarth has denied the accusations against him, he's also conceded he needs to change his ways.
These Hedley fans are unwavering in their support, even as the band's lead singer admits he objectified women.
He has admitted to not treating women with the respect, but that doesn't mean that he's a rapist.
It's not just him, though. It's the whole entire band. So we're not just here for one person. It's here for the entire band.
In his statement, Jacob Hogarth says, "I have never engaged in non-consensual sexual behavior in my life, ever. But the way I've treated women was reckless and dismissive of their feelings."
I think he's only sorry because he got caught.
Not good enough for the 24-year-old Ottawa woman who alleges Hogarth forced her to have anal sex. She says he slapped and spat on her and called her a dirty little pig.
There is not a single woman in the world that I know that would consent to being degraded. And that's what he did to me. He degraded me. I think he needs a lesson on consent, actually.
Falling 1,000 feet per second.
The band has fallen from grace after sexual misconduct allegations by mostly anonymous women surfaced on social media. Hedley says they will go on indefinite hiatus after 3 more weeks of touring. This music journalist says that decision is about money.
I think if there was a mass exodus of fans, they would probably decide, why are we performing? They've said they're doing it for their fans, and if those fans continue to show up, and I guess there are showing up with signs saying, "I stand with Hedley."
I feel sorry for them because they thought that this man was someone who he's not. I think that people need to choose better idols.
Jacob Hogarth says when the tour ends, he will seek guidance from his family and the women in his life. His accuser hopes he'll seek therapy. Judy Trin, CBC News, Ottawa.
Hedley is scheduled to play 15 more concerts this month before wrapping up its tour. The last show will be March 23rd in Kelowna. You can read more of our investigative reporting and everything else our journalists do daily in our newsletter. You can subscribe at cbcnews.ca/The National. And hey, check your inbox every weekday afternoon. Tonight on The National, some scary moments on board an Air Canada plane at Toronto's Pearson Airport. The Vancouver-bound plane was waiting for takeoff when a passenger's cell phone caught fire.
And people were jumping out of their seats, and I looked behind me, and in the aisle, it looked like a small campfire-sized flame. And then I saw someone start stamping on it, trying to put it out.
The cabin crew used a fire extinguisher to quickly put out the flames. The phone in question was an LG. Still unclear what caused it to catch fire, but its owner, the female passenger, had to be taken to hospital to be treated for minor burns. The northern white rhino is getting closer to extinction. This is Sudan, the last male rhinoceros of that kind, and he's not doing well. Sudan's caregivers wrote online today that his health is deteriorating and they're very concerned. The 45-year-old rhino lives at a wildlife sanctuary in Kenya with the last 2 females of the subspecies.
Life inside eastern Ghouta in Syria is unimaginable for most of us, and as we've been telling you for a while now, food and medicine can't get in, but over social media, at least one person is trying to get the message out, and you've probably never seen a war correspondent like this.
This is my city has been destroyed because of your silence. It is my school which has become a target for Putin and Assad crimes.
So this video was posted earlier today. A teenager shows us his home, his school, and his city, or what's left of it. And this isn't the first video he has shared with the world.
I am Mohammed Najm. I am 15 years old.
Mohammed Najm has been broadcasting for about 2 months, often squinting, brows knitted in concentration. He is delivering reports on life under siege with broken English and blunt force.
He survived and his mother passed away. I am not going to apologize about the ugliness photos.
He's interviewed children about their New Year's wishes.
أنا أتمنى نخلص من الطيارة.
I wish the airstrikes stop.
أتمنى أن لا أجيب حطب ولا أعبي ماء.
I don't want to bring fire and water.
He's pleaded to viewers for help.
You are killed by your silence. Bashar Assad, Putin, and Khamenei killed our childhood. Save us before too late.
Sometimes he simply stared silently into the camera as smoke rises from his city. So we can't verify that his videos or photos are authentic. We don't know who else might be writing his words or shaping his message, but that matter-of-fact sign-off.
محمد نجم إسرنغوطة. محمد نجم إسرنغوطة. محمد نجم إسرنغوطة.
Well, that stands out amidst the rubble, like an exposed nerve.
Help us and don't be like the rest of the world. محمد نجم إسرنغوطة.
So we reached out to Mohammed a few times this week. He did get back to us initially. We haven't heard from him in a few days, and we hope he's okay.
It's so interesting because we've been talking, all of us, people in the newsroom, about how teenagers in the United States and in other places are trying to make real change. And I find that so fascinating that that voice obviously has such power and that he's trying to help his country that way.
Well, and let me just say I'm reminded of that mostly blank statement that UNICEF issued not too long ago about the ongoing crisis in Syria. No words will do justice to the children killed, their mothers, their fathers, and their loved ones. I don't know if that's true, but it can certainly feel that way sometimes.
Well, and some of those kids are saying it for themselves. That is the National for Thursday, March 1st. Good night.
Good night.